Week 31, Overview, Reagan's Revolution. This week is packed again. We've reached Ronald Reagan, who was president for the bulk of the 1980s, January of 1981 to January of 1989. Reagan ran against Jimmy Carter in a low-turnout election in 1980. Confidence in the presidency and in the power of the federal government had waned so much that millions didn't even bother to vote in the 1980 presidential election. People didn't want to re-elect Carter, but many didn't trust Reagan. Sophisticated Americans saw him as a bad joke, a simple-minded B-movie actor without the wisdom or experience to run the country. Americans didn't expect much from Reagan or Carter. But that was fine with Ronald Reagan. He was continuously underestimated, partly because he wanted to be. He styled himself as one of the people, a fellow citizen who just happened to be elected president. When attacked harshly, he gave gentle, often humorous, replies. He was comfortable in front of the camera, and the life he lived before the White House, though unorthodox, made him one of the strongest American leaders of the century. Reagan was born the son of an Illinois shoe salesman in 1911. As a young boy, he loved nature and cowboys. While in high school, Reagan acted in school plays and was elected student body president. He was a sophomore in college when the stock market crashed in 1929, and he graduated into the Great Depression. His first job after college was a sportscaster, broadcasting over the radio at $10 per football game. In 1937, Reagan moved to Hollywood, where he took a screen test at a movie studio. He had a wholesome look that landed him a contract with Warner Brothers, where he wound up making more than 50 movies. He didn't fight in World War II, but the movies he made about courageous soldiers reflected his own beliefs about fighting for freedom. In his younger days, Reagan was a Democrat who loved FDR and supported the New Deal. He was a member of the Screen Actors Guild and then became president of that union, serving 5 consecutive terms. He hosted a television show, the General Electric Theater, and became a public spokesman for GE. In this role, Reagan consistently interacted with the folks, blue-collar workers of the heartland of America. In this capacity, being a people person, he listened and learned. He gradually changed from liberal to conservative views of government during these years. Reagan began to stress increasingly conservative ideas, such as the importance of free enterprise and the dangers of too much government. Though he was still a Democrat, he campaigned for Eisenhower in 1952 and Richard Nixon in 1960. His changing views finally led him to officially join the Republican Party in 1962. He won national fame with a speech supporting Barry Goldwater, who lost to LBJ in 1964. That speech propelled him into politics, where he won the election for governor of California in 1966. As governor, Reagan reformed the welfare system, balanced the state's budget, cut taxes, and ordered gas attacks on anti-war demonstrators. His style of governing caught the nation's attention. Reagan was quite a contrast to Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford. Neither of those presidents had been able to inspire the nation. Reagan was called the great communicator because of his ability to convey big thoughts with clarity and conviction. Reagan's election campaign included many memorable moments. He told America, "A recession is when your neighbor loses his job. A depression is when you lose yours. And recovery is when Jimmy Carter loses his." Where Carter had scolded America for their crisis of confidence, Reagan exuded optimism. He insisted that America's best days are yet to come. That was what the public wanted, and Reagan won 44 states to Carter's 6. That landslide victory gave him the mandate he needed to get things done. Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate, but Republicans and conservative Democrats united to pass his tax cuts. Reagan believed in supply-side economics, the core idea of which is that if wealthy people are released from government regulations and heavy taxation, they will use more money to build businesses and create jobs. In a trickle-down effect, then, both investment and demand will increase, making the economy stronger for all segments of society. In the Republican primary, one of his rivals labeled that idea voodoo economics. Opponents called this tax cuts for the rich and said it would drive up the deficit. Supporters said it would boost the economy so much that tax revenues would actually go up. It took 2 years before America saw the results of Reagan's tax cuts, but in the end, the economy did go up, and so did tax revenues. But so did the deficit, due to increased spending on the military and other matters. Reagan spent a lot of money on the military. He believed the Soviet Union was a significant threat to the United States. a force of evil. Reagan's stance was similar to earlier presidents, but it came as a shock after the Carter years. Many were dismayed when Reagan openly called the Soviet Union the evil empire. Reagan renewed America's policy of containment, funding what he called freedom fighters around the world. He provided arms to the Mujahideen, the holy warriors in Afghanistan, which included a young militant from Saudi Arabia named Osama bin Laden. Democrats in Congress objected and passed an amendment that banned direct funding of the Contras who were fighting the communist government of Nicaragua. The biggest scandal of Reagan's presidency occurred when members of his administration negotiated with Iran to get money for the Contras. When the news of secret deals first broke, Reagan loudly insisted that nobody had done anything wrong. Then, as more details emerged, it became clear that his staff had sold arms to Iran in exchange for the release of hostages held by pro-Iranian factions in Lebanon, and then used the Iranian money to supply the Nicaraguans. Although Reagan insisted that he never knew about these secret deals and took full responsibility for what happened, the scandal left a lasting stain on his credibility. Iran needed those American weapons. They had been fighting Iraq for 6 years by the time the Iran-Contra scandal became public, a long, ugly struggle that echoed the worst features of World War I. After quick initial victories by Iraq and significant land gains in the initial days of the war, things bogged down. Saddam Hussein had assumed that ethnic Arabs inside Iran would rally to his side, but they didn't. As the Iranians regrouped, they launched offensives that left both sides with staggeringly high casualties. It became a trench war, complete with the artillery fire, infantry assaults, and poison gas of World War I, even though Iraq had signed the international treaties that banned the use of gas. The two sides started attacking each other's ships, threatening the supply of oil from the critical Persian Gulf region. The U.S. started escorting tankers through the Gulf and made arrangements to store arms and equipment in the nearby Gulf states, just in case. Reagan didn't just rely on freedom fighters to counter the Soviet threat. He had bigger ideas. In 1983, he proposed a space-based missile defense system that would shoot down incoming nuclear missiles. That, in itself, would be a good thing, but Reagan had a deeper reason for proposing it. He knew a race for a working missile shield would force the Soviets to spend money they didn't have to keep up, weakening an already struggling Soviet economy. Reagan's critics attacked this Strategic Defense Initiative project. They called it Star Wars because it seemed like something out of science fiction. They said it couldn't work, said it was too expensive, said it would trigger World War III. None of that stopped Reagan. Star Wars eventually paid off, not by shooting down missiles, but by pushing Russia to the brink of destitution. The new Soviet leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, recognized the trouble he was in, and he sought to liberalize the Soviet Union and sign an arms agreement with the United States. President Reagan stood at the Berlin Wall in 1987, near the end of his presidency, and made a stirring speech about the coming demise of communism. The Berlin Wall was, for all, the icon of the Cold War. Reagan's speech included his famous call, "Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." We'll see what happened there next week. Reagan had tremendous personal gifts, but he had his weaknesses, too. He was a hands-off leader who delegated a lot. Too much, in the case of the Contras. He didn't care for details, which made him overly dependent on his staff. His confidence in the power of tax cuts was proven right, in one sense, but he did not or could not keep spending under control, which left America with unprecedented peacetime deficits. There's way too much that happened during Reagan's 8 years in office to squeeze it all into one short overview, but your children have read more details. Ask them to tell you all about what they have learned about Reagan.